in the production of art. And it's contrary in its intentional order. Now, what I mean by intentional order, an artist is not only a person who deals with beauty, but also is a moral being. It's a human person relating to another human being and communicating to other human beings. So there is a moral responsibility. And that moral responsibility lies in the intentional order. What is my intention? As I sculpt a naked lady, what is my intention? Is my intention is for my own arousal and the arousal of my audience, which would be basically pornography? Or is it to bring myself to understand the beauty that's much deeper, the supersensual beauty, the higher beauty that's behind this person, that's in this person, and it's in my relationship with this person? And also to help your audience. By doing that, you lead the artist, it gives dignity to the person and challenges the audience to appreciate the beauty on a higher level. Okay? So it's very, very important in the production of art, especially today. The observance or non-observance of these norms, so deeply connected with man's personal sensitivity, cannot be a matter of indifference for the problem of creating a climate favorable to chastity in life and social education. So we cannot afford to be indifferent about these aspects. These are crucial if we want to create a climate favorable to chastity. The deep inscription of the meaning of the human body can be violated only in the intentional order of the reproduction and representation. If the sense of shame and personal sensitivity is offended in these cases, that happens because of their transfer to the dimension of social communication. So this violation happens in the intentional order, what the artist is intending. And this happens in reproduction and representation. So reproduction would be mechanical, representation would be what the artist does. And personal sensitivity is offended in these cases. And that happens because of the transfer to the social dimension. So that relationship between man and woman belongs between the spouses, the intimate relationship. And when the nudity is brought to a larger audience, that brings with it tremendous responsibility from the artist and from the producer, the photographer or filmmaker. So there's a tremendous responsibility there. The truth about man must also be considered in the artistic order if we want to speak of full realism. Now, I'm in Florence because that's where the greatest concentration of the most talented representational artists, figurative artists, people who work from the body, they all go to Florence because that is where the greatest art, the greatest art teaching is and the greatest works of art, a lot of them. So you have this funnel and you have this great concentration of really, really talented artists. And these people have the ability, because they are dealing with reality, the tangible reality of the body, because they're dealing with and they're contemplating the body visually, they have the best opportunity. They're the most prepared to understand the theology of the body. But they're all talking about realism, but a lot of them, most of them, don't get the full realism because they're only dealing with reproducing the actual model before them. So they'll have a model like this, fully nude or whatever, but they would be reproducing the model exactly. They'd be getting all the anatomy and everything, which is all very good, But that's not what art is about. That's more science. Art is about a lot more. It's about the relationship between the artist and the model. And that's not necessarily sexual. But the relationship there's a relationship between a person and a person. And there's a full realism that's called for. But that can only be penetrated through a deep understanding of the theology of the body. So that's why when I discovered theology of the body 10 years ago in New York, you'll hear about that later on if you come to the talk later on, which is the art exhibition. To have a full realism, you must understand the theology of the body in its fullest. The object-subject of the work of art, or of the audio-visual reproduction, is a problem which is not only aesthetic but also ethical, involving an unknown reception and an unforeseen response, and is treated in the order, or threatened in the order of intention, in the sense that it may become an anonymous object of appropriation, an object of abuse. So, first of all, we're talking about the responsibility of the artist. Here, we're talking about the responsibility of the viewer, the audience. So it's a problem that's not only aesthetic, but also ethical. Very clear. Involving an unknown reception. How am I to know how my work is going to be received? If I do a sculpture of a nude, how do I know how it's going to be received? Now, there's an interesting incident. A few years ago, I did an exhibition in Clarendon Street, and I had this image. It was a drawing of a nude. It was an academic drawing of a nude, and this old lady came up and said, "That's pornography." I said, interesting. And that's quite a thing to say to somebody. Basically, you're saying, I'm a pervert. And I had to say, well, I had to do it as politely as possible, but make the point very clear. I said, well, to be honest, that drawing was done by me with purity of heart. So there is no impurity from the artist. The drawing itself is a piece of paper and a bit of charcoal and a bit of chalk, which has no moral aspect whatsoever. So if there's some bad intention perceived, it's not coming from me, and it's not coming from the piece of paper. And she gave me the dirtiest look I ever saw in my life. Could have shut her up anyway. Okay. So it has an anonymous object of appropriation. This is what happens. It becomes an anonymous object of appropriation. Nobody knows. It could be taken up in any way, like that lady. And an object of abuse. I could do with full purity of intention, and somebody could use it as pornography. So my responsibility is limited. I can only go so far, but I have to. At the same time, you have to challenge your audience to see with purity of heart, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about my work, is that you can challenge people, you can educate people in the dignity of the body. The truth about man, about what is particularly personal and interior in him, precisely because of his body and his sex, femininity, masculinity, creates here precise limits which it is unlawful to exceed. So it's very important to realize the power of our sexuality and the limits, even in dress, how you dress. Guys, it goes for guys as well as girls. You know, what is the target? I was talking to Veronica earlier on about this. She's very interested in theology of the body and fashion. Very, very interesting area, and I would challenge anybody to to tackle that area because it's a very, very important area. What are you saying with your body? What is the central focus of what you're wearing? Is it to arouse, or is it to celebrate your dignity and your beauty in a dignified way? It's a very interesting question. These limits must be recognized and observed by the artist, who makes the human body the object, model, or subject of the work of art, or of the audiovisual reproduction. A subject uprooted from its own authentic substratum. The whole problem of pornovision and pornography is not the effect of a puritanical mentality or of a narrow moralism, just as it is not the product of a thought imbued with Manichaeanism. It is a question of an extremely important, fundamental sphere of values. So, these limits must be recognized and observed by artists. We have that obligation, and people who take photographs and make film. It's a subject uprooted from its own authentic substratum. So its authentic substratum is the spousal relationship. So you're uprooting it, and by doing that, you have to do it with tremendous care. Just thinking, it's like uprooting a plant and putting it in another place. You have to do it with tremendous care. And that's what an artist is doing. And anybody who's dealing with their sexuality, when you have to be very careful and respectful. This is not an effect of a puritanical mentality or a narrow moralism. We're not talking about petty Victorian values here. We're talking about real, live power of our sexuality and beauty. It is a question of an extremely important fundamental sphere of values. That's what we're dealing with here. This is a paraphrase. As you can see, it's totally in italics. I remember hearing it somewhere. I'm convinced it's John Paul II, but it's a fantastic phrase and make a great t-shirt. The problem with pornography is not that it shows too much of the body, but that it shows too little of the person. Fantastic phrase. Very, very important. Try and let that penetrate into your mind, because people think that, it's a lovely answer to people. What's wrong with pornography? The problem is, it's not shows. They would think that, it's showing too much. It's rude. It's dirty. It's filth. No, that's not what it's about. It doesn't show enough about the person. St. Matthew, but I say to you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. I just put this quote in here in the middle of all this just to, we were talking about John Paul, and here we have Christ. This is a magnificent phrase, and it sums up everything what we're talking about. The nuptial meaning of femininity and masculinity is inscribed in the whole interior and at the same time visible structure of the human person. So, the nuptial meaning is very clearly manifest in our body, through our genitalia and so on. Okay, it's very, very clear. But it's also in the whole interior, how we relate to each other. Understanding who you are as a man or a woman is fundamental in your relationship with others. How you relate with the opposite sex and how you relate with your own sex. It's fundamental. There is a special responsibility which is not only artistic, to be aware of the full truth of the object, of the whole scale of values connected with it. The artist must not only take them into account in abstract, but also live them correctly himself. So we're not only talking about an artistic aspect here. This responsibility is not only artistic. We're dealing with the full truth of the object, the whole scale of values, which make the human person. The artist must not only take them into account in abstracto. I can't just talk about theology of the body as an abstract concept. No, I have to live this. This has to be part of my life, because if it's not part of my life, if I'm not living this, if the theology of the body does not transform me, it will not transform my work, and I will not be able to help other people become transformed through my work. Now, that's not just an artist, but that goes for all of us. We must be transformed by the theology of the body if we are to communicate it to others. Otherwise, it just becomes another intellectual plaything. And it's too valuable to be left at that. His art manifests his interior world of values, and so also his living the truth of his object. In this process, a characteristic transfiguration of the model or of the material takes place. So when an artist makes a work of art, he's manifesting his interior world of values. Now, this is Canova. He's a neoclassical artist. He's very good, but not my taste particularly. But he is manifesting his values. His values are Neoplatonic values, and he sees women in that way. And God help him. So he's living his truth living his truth of the object. How he understands women is that way. Okay, so that's what he manifests. In the process of a characteristic transfiguration of the model takes place. So he's transfiguring the model. You can see there's